Okay, so we have today we saw Miss Rex's lesson, which I think you did an amazing job. I first wanted to ask you a couple of questions. So, how do you think your lesson went?
I think my lesson went well. I think the original lesson that I had going, I actually changed it a bunch, just because I had to analyze it and make sure that it was gonna be a good lesson to start off with.
Okay.
I had a lot of things going on when I originally designed the lesson. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I don't know. Just trying to
So the plans that we had yesterday and on what we talked about, you
change.
did a quick, you switched them around.
Oh yeah.
Based on the needs of the students, or
Yes.
based on how you saw the lesson, it needed to be introduced a different way because of the class, or because of
It was actually because I was introducing comparing and contrasting for the first time, and I was not sure how the kids would actually react to their previous knowledge, or
Okay,
their
yeah.
schema of
Okay.
comparing and contrasting. So I didn't want to tie in, because I originally had said that I wanted to do responsibility.
And you had showed
And
me those books. Can I
yes.
see the books? These were the books that in the original lesson that Miss Rex was gonna do, but she switched everything around. And I do want to show something. I want to show what our district has, which are these giant monitors here. So she actually did a passage on here instead of those books. So that was one of the changes. And
This was the passage that was.
this was the passage that was on the giant computer screen.
Yes.
Okay, so now that we have that down, so your lesson was compare and contrast. Compare and contrast. This was a dual language class, and your lesson was in Spanish.
Yes, ma'am.
I liked how you introduced your lesson by activating their background knowledge. And I really liked how you say turn and talk, habla con tu vecino, because, that showed maybe if they didn't have it, they can get it from their partner. And you said that was one of your concerns in starting this lesson. So I really liked how you started with that. You also said while they were, turning and talking, you also praised them and they said, you told them, me gusta como unas personas abrieron su cuaderno. So that in English means, I liked how you are looking in your interactive journal. So that shows evidence of learning. Okay, so then not only were they just sharing their background knowledge, but it was evidence of they were starting to share the T-chart, the Venn diagram, and they used that, that terminology. There wasn't just, because I think it was about eggs, so it wasn't just like the color and an egg and there's different colors. No, they actually used academic language, and they were able to reference to the T-chart and Venn diagram. Now this lesson is on a Friday, so it also showed the evidence of what you taught Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Another thing that I really liked was your great use of sentence stems. So, there were certain occasions where you did ask a question, and then you said turn and talk. You let them turn and talk, and then when they finished turning and talking, you gave them the sentence stem on how to answer that question. So now the students, they've talked about it, and now they know, okay, so I can answer, that's my answer, but now I can answer with the academic language. So that was really good too. So in my notes I put, I was able to see the lessons done throughout the week just by their learning and by your anchor chart and by the way that the students were responding. On your anchor charts, it also showed how you were building up to today's lesson, and how today's lesson was like a complete you wrapped up the lesson and it was ready to go. So like from right there to the next part, what would your next part be?
So the next part, I could probably do something a little more abstract, like la honestidad, and
Oh, so
la
now
responsabilidad.
you would
Now
do,
I could do
now
that
you would do the
because
books.
I think frog like introducing something like concrete, like a frog. You know, the difference between a frog and a toad. It's something that they have more knowledge about now. Honesty.
That was a very good article, by the way. It did make them think. It made it like, wait a minute, rana y sapo.
Yeah,
like,
they didn't. They thought it was the same to begin with, and I even thought it was the same to begin with. So it taught me something too. But now I could actually have them compare something a little more abstract, like honestidad and responsabilidad. So I think we're gonna do that next, because next week I think we're gonna be covering comparing and contrasting again, like on Friday I think as well. And so I'll be doing something like that, and also tying in questions from the STAR. Sent question stems maybe of how they would see it there, so that way they can make that connection.
Okay, that's awesome. You had a great use of technology. You also your classroom is filled with anchor charts leading up to today's lesson, and that was awesome. You also I do have a couple of questions. Oh, I also like the use of the interactive journal. So in some classes, they start with a journal, but for a student to, I was able to witness the students actually open the journal, take notes, answer from there, flip other pages, and they looked at trying to look for the answer. So that was a great. That's great. That's big kudos on that, because not every class has interactive journals like that.
Well, to me, I always feel like whenever I was in school, anytime I would write something down, it would stick more. So if I was physically writing down what the teacher was saying.
Pardon the interruption, but it's time for our hero winners. This week our winners are Miss Cardenas' class, Miss Encinas, Miss Castillo, Miss Cox, and Mr. Young. Thank you.
And I can see how that's important, and it really is. I can clearly see how the students are learning from that.
And one thing that I also even did with the interactive journals is I actually kept my college notes, and I've
so
showed
you share
them.
that with them?
Yeah, I share it with them.
Awesome.
And I've said, this is what it takes to be a good scholar, and so this is not
you
only
show them
yeah.
an actual. Can I see it real quick?
This is not only happening in my classroom, so it's happening in college too.
Wow,
So
that is awesome.
yeah.
All right. Do you think your students learn what you intended them to learn?
Yes. After you left, we did I called it compare and contrast around the room, and I had task cards all over the room posted, and they were to work with a partner and read the story, the various task cards together, and then answer the similarities and differences, and they had to pick whatever method they wanted to capture their data on, whether it be a Venn diagram or the T-chart. Mm-hmm. And so you saw, I told them, there's 10 cards, just do 6 of them, whatever 6 you want. And so I was walking around and monitoring, and the kids were excited, they were learning, and they said that they were having fun determining the differences and similarities of the different stories.
Did they have a hard time with the similarities?
They had less similarities, because I think there was a few stories that I purposely picked because they had more similarities. So when they would go to, I think there was 2 of them, they said, oh, this one is easy because you can see that this one's mostly everything is the same, and there's a few differences. But yeah, on the other ones, it was harder for them to identify the similarities.
Okay, so I saw evidence of your student expectations, how they had to have a journal, keep up with the journal, look into the journal for notes. As far as behavior, your expectations were clearly demonstrated. Everybody was on task, learning, engaged and collaborating with each other. Classroom management was amazing. All students participated. They were all interested in the lesson, and I really liked how you got the students' attention with, you said whose house, Cook, and the kids responded Cook's house. So that's a good attention grabber. Now I did notice that then there was a little time where they wanted to keep talking about answering the question, talking with their partner. So then you said Chapulín Colorado. So it's like that's like the second one.
Yeah, that's like they know after Chapulín, you say Colorado, and it should be dead silence. The
Okay.
first one, I'll let you cut up maybe a little bit, but after the second one, they know that we're gonna move on.
Okay. Alrighty, so a couple of things that I did see that I will see if we can share is when this is a dual language class, and in the dual language class you have one day English, one day Spanish. Or no, not in fourth grade. You have English, and then you have you have Spanish, and then your partner has English.
Right.
Right. You don't flip flop.
No, I stay
You stay
in my
Spanish.
language.
Okay. So one of the students answered the question, but she answered it in English, but she was in the Spanish class. So an important component of the dual language is to keep the Spanish all in Spanish when it's when they're in the Spanish class. Now, I think that's great that you allowed the student to answer. I don't, we should never say, do not talk in English in here. No, I'm not saying that. But a good suggestion is after she said her answer in English, a good idea is for you to repeat it in what she said in Spanish. And that way, maybe she didn't, there were certain words that she didn't know, to say in Spanish. And then, but you repeating it, it's like, entonces lo que me estás tratando de decir es que la rana, and the same thing she said, but in Spanish, and that just helps her.
And it might help a student also. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It might help someone who doesn't know. I had a student in that class that doesn't know English, still he's a newcomer, so it could have helped him as well. That's good advice.
Wait time. So the class was very engaged, and I know we're limited in time with, during the day, but the wait time of the students, if we allow a little bit more flexibility in that area, I think that'll also help. Maybe a student like her that, they're all eager to answer and they're all engaged, and that's awesome. But the students that are trying to process the two languages, or the students that are just a little slower, they need that little wait time, and then they can't catch up.
Yeah.
So those are two things that I think would be beneficial in your lessons. Other than that, everything was great. Now that you've had that, we talked about what you were going to do on the lesson. You tweaked the lesson, you did the lesson. What's your reflection on the overall lesson that you did?
I hope that they were able to grasp, I plan to continue giving them the support that they need to be able to obtain the concept, maybe turn the task cards that I did into smaller cards, and maybe do it, during our bear time.
Okay.
For intervention
time.
Okay. And so that way, because I only saw two groups of kids today, so maybe the other groups of kids could also get that same kind of support that they would need. And it was a little engaging for them, so it's just a fun way to practice. So,
was there anything else that you would do differently? Would you break it up, the lesson even more?
I probably would. I think it was a lot. I would probably break it up into maybe 2 days of the lesson, so that way it's not so hard, and like you said, add more wait time, so that way the kids could
process
the information
a little bit longer. Okay. Now, as far as your differentiated instruction, if you can have like the sentence stems already ready and written there, then the students that are low in English, I mean in Spanish, because not all of the students are, their first language is Spanish, that would really help them, and they can refer to the sentence stem. So that's another thing that I forgot to tell you. But so the sentence stems, if you can just have them posted, then that would be a great way for all the students, and then it'll help with the wait time.
Yeah.
And then those students, have you noticed that there are some students that never answer, or they're always, reluctant to answer if it's
There's a few, yeah.
yeah. So maybe some sentence stems would help them out. And then you can just, when you do call on them, they know there's a wait time. They can process, point to the sentence stems like, okay, Alvaro, so what do
Yeah.
can you answer that? And, that can help them.
Mhm.
Okay, so do you think your students were productively engaged?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Do you feel that you were able to reach all your class, or did you see while you were teaching that there are some that you're going to have to reteach or just go over a couple of things with them?
Well, I do have a few SPED babies in that class, so I knew that as soon as I sent them to do the independent work, those were going to be the babies
Okay.
that were going to be in my small group. And so I strategically had extra cards printed to be able to have them in a small group setting while the others worked with the partner.
So that was kind of my next question. How do you know if they got the lesson? So after the lesson, they were able to do their little cards, and they were, and they, okay. And then that's how you
They produced the
monitor
work.
to see, okay. All right, so that's awesome. That's
And I
awesome.
initially put the SPED babies with a partner, just to see if they could do it alone. Just to give them that option to try to do it alone. But then I did see them struggling a little more, and so I didn't want to do that to them. So
You think it was a text or the lesson?
It was a text.
It was a text. I think
Yeah.
it was a text because,
Yeah.
if
Their partner would read it, and then they weren't. They you could tell that they were not up to speed with their partner. So I just went ahead and just brought them to me, and then they were fine.
Awesome. Alrighty. So overall, I think you were amazing. I want to thank you for allowing me to video you. I mean, you're not going to come out on the video. I'm coming out on the video, but your
Anytime.
voice and everything. I thank you very much for it. And, I really appreciate you
Well,
helping me.
no problem.
Thank you.